treat for you. Most of you know him, and if you're new today, you are in for quite a treat. David Stark is the Public Relations Director at Bay East and also serves on the Board of Directors for the Chamber of Commerce here in Pleasanton. So he works here, he plays here, he lives here, and please help me welcome David Stark with a update.
Take it off, David.
You want me to take my tie off? Want me to take my jacket off? It is kind of hot. I think I'm just going to stand up here and listen to the suggestions you all have for me because this is kind of amusing.
After all, it is a comedy club now.
Wow, that just happened. As long as I'm happy. That's all I have to say about that. Good morning. I'm going to do some different things this morning. I'm actually going to do some prognosticating, which is a big word for prediction, which is something that I typically don't do. But because the market is changing, I think it might be time for a little prognostication. And I'm going to add some new content that we haven't seen before, and I'm not going to tell you what that new content is because frankly I've forgotten what it is, but when the slides come up, that's going to happen. No, I know exactly what it is, and I think you're going to find it interesting. So the big story, of course, is inventory. So what I'd like to do is go back, let's see if we can make this work. It was working. There we go. Okay. Oh, now it's working too good. Go back a couple, let's go back one more. Stop, just stop right there. I think that many of you have already seen a version of this slide, which is the number of single-family homes that are listed on our MLS here in the TriValley for these 5 markets. And I want to emphasize, especially for those of you that haven't seen this presentation before, that this data comes directly from the Paragon Multiple Listing Service. It's not an algorithm-based sample of what some economist thinks what's going on. This is actual data from the Multiple Listing Service. And you can draw your own conclusions from that. What's new here is I've taken a look at what's been listed for sale year to date. And our definition of year to date is through the end of May. So when you see this big dive from 672 units to 320 units, that just reflects the first 5 months of this year, specifically for single-family listings. But the takeaway from this is we're not quite halfway through the year, and we've got basically half of the total number of listings that we had last year. So if we continue on this trend that's been established in the first 5 months, which is sellers are getting off the fence, I would anticipate that this drop in inventory, the slide in inventory that we've been seeing consistently since 2008 is actually going to flatten out. I thought that might be an applause line, but maybe. Thank you. I don't know. Maybe it's the decaf is too popular. So the bottom line is that people are figuring out big price appreciation. Maybe now is actually the time to sell. So I think this is encouraging news. Our next slide, and Chris, I'm just going to. You all know Chris Scoville. Back. Let's give it up for Chris. If y'all remind me, I've got an exciting announcement that involves Chris and Don and Dale that I'll try to remember to make later in the presentation. Chris, if we go to the next slide. So this is 2 years on a month-by-month basis, and this trend here looks like a standard real estate year. We see an increase in inventory starting in the spring, and we're actually up a little bit compared to where we were last year. We're not where we were 2 years ago in May of 2012, where there were about 100 units listed on the market, but we're getting there. Chris, if we go to the next slide, here's a snapshot going year to year. You can see that we're up 15%. Dublin is way up for single-family listings, and that, of course, is partially driven by the new inventory out there. And it's just, Dublin's it's a strong market. That's a significant increase for Dublin, and we're up really across the board both in terms of a percentage increase and in terms of real numbers as well. So, what's interesting though about this market is while it's encouraging that we're seeing an increase in inventory, the fact that sales prices are so strong does have an impact on actual sales activity. Chris, if we could go to the next couple slides, we're going to skip right over this one and right into this one. So what I've done here, and like I mentioned earlier, this is similar to what you've seen before, where we go back to 2001, we look at sales activity during the build-up, we look at the drop in sales activity when prices were going super crazy, which is more than regular crazy. Super crazy is more than regular crazy, in case you didn't know. And then we see this steady rebound as people that were priced out of the market, 2005, 2008, got into the market. What I've done here is take a look at sales activity through the first 5 months, and yeah, it's 217 units, which of course is less than the 690 so units that we sold last year, 2013. Now, again, don't freak out because this just reflects the first 5 months, but you can see that we're way off pace in terms of sales activity, which may be sort of a head scratcher. You know, just a couple of slides ago I said, hey, inventory is on pace with last year. Why is sales activity down? Well, when we get to sales prices, I'll let you draw your own conclusions. So I was talking to Jim Branchetti a couple weeks ago. We were getting ready for some media stuff, and she was saying, hey, you know, maybe it's time now for sellers to start negotiating. And we still have multiple offers out there, but maybe we're starting to get a little bit of pushback on these high sales prices. I think that's reflected in the slight drop in sales activity. Another way to look at this, Chris, if we go to the next slide, here's the last couple of years of sales activity on a monthly basis. Pretty steady through 2013, and we see this increase going through the spring. It looks dramatic from this perspective, but I'm anticipating things are going to taper off. Another way to look at this, and this is something that your clients are probably seeing. Chris, if we go to the next slide. So year to year, we do have a 17% increase, which seems pretty dramatic. It's a 10-unit increase in terms of real numbers, which directly corresponds with that 10-unit increase that we saw in inventory. So a few different ways to look at sales activity over a longer period of time. I would anticipate things are going to stay strong, but it's not going to be nearly as dramatic increase as we saw in inventory. Year to year, it's up, it's encouraging. Looking at some other markets though, you know, Danville, and you're going to see it in a couple of slides, their median sales price is north of $1 million. And at some point, even if you are a well-heeled investor, you've got all the cash in the world, at some point you're going to say, hey, wait a minute. And I think we're starting to see that, especially at the upper end of the market. Any reaction, just different opinion on that? Yes, no? I got Debbie nodding, so that's always a good thing. Unless she's nodding off. Are you nodding off? Phil, if you could do the poke, that'd be great. Okay, thank you, Phil. Appreciate that. Let's talk about the sales prices. I've alluded to it a couple times. Chris, next slide, please. So, next slide. Here we are, going back to 2001. The big check-in points, beginning of the century, our median sales price for single-family homes in the 640 range. At the top of the market, we were 835. And we saw some very, very dramatic increases, 2012, 2013. We end, where we are year to date in 2014 is 896.5. So that's the median for the first 5 months. And if you're wondering if this market does have a limit, if you look at the percentage change, and you know, we had this dramatic double-digit price appreciation in 2012, 2013, first 5 months of 2014, it's still going up, but just not nearly as quickly. So, a couple factors there. It could be a number of things. I mean, purchase financing is still cheap, but your underwriting is tough, right? Especially at that end of the market. Let's take a look at this in another perspective. Chris, if you could, next slide. So here we are, 24 months of information, actually 25 months of information. It doesn't look that impressive. We start May 2013 at 885. By the end of the year, we were actually at 848, so a little drop as we went into the fall, and then things come up. We're actually at 953 for May of 2014, which is above the median for the first 5 months. That's a lot of money. You know, we're now flirting with $1 million, and I think that's maybe getting some of your clients to think twice about, do we really want to come in that high, or is there going to be some wiggle room in these prices? We'll do the year-to-year snapshot, Chris, if you could. So here we are, an 8% gain. I'm going to leave that up there for a second so you can let this sink in. Also, I'm thirsty. Oh, that's not right. Wrong cup. Yeah, that had something in it. Yeah, leftover from the birthday party last night. So look at this, Danville 1.1, and then that's a 21% jump. That's big. Danville's absolutely on fire. My question is, how sustainable is that? Dublin up 8%, Livermore, big jump. I would attribute this big jump in Livermore to the fact that they do have some headroom. 550 last year, that was still a pretty, reasonable. Again, it's a matter of perspective, but there was some room for increase, and we saw that. Going from 850, that's pretty stratospheric when you talk about the financing implications of buying your median price home at 850. So that's why we see just this paltry 8%, and I mean that in a kind of jokey way, paltry 8% increase, because we're now at 953. The next set of slides I like because it takes this kind of academic discussion about median sales price and it puts it in perspective. Hit it, Chris. So instead of just showing you the median price home, what does the market look like? I mean, when we say median, that means that half the transactions were above that amount, half were below. But your clients, they don't care about the median price. They care about the price that they're going to pay for their home. So here's another way of taking a look at pricing over the last 13 months. The bottom line is very little activity in the $500,000 range and down, basically nothing, just a handful of properties. Where's the bulk of the activity? It's up here in the 800 to 900 range. And what's really, really impressive is the number of $1 million to $2 million homes. Someone who's good at math, you can add those up real quick. It's Friday. I'm not doing math this early on a Friday.
47.
Who said that?
47.
200, thank you, Bradley. 247 units sold for more than $1 million. Wow. Wow. And when you think about the fundamentals driving this market, that's pretty interesting. I've been talking to more people about schools recently because there's some of this so-called drama going on with some of the administrative issues. It doesn't seem to be impacting actual scores. People still like this community. They're moving here. They love it. It's sustainable. Whether we're going to see the double-digit price appreciation, I do think we're at the point now, especially if Ms. Yellen stays true to her word and the cost of money goes up towards the end of this year. In a little prognostication here, I just don't know how sustainable those big price appreciations are going to be. I don't necessarily see things retrenching and going backwards, but I think that we're getting close to a plateau on pricing. Any difference of opinion there on that? Feel free to challenge me on my assumptions. Okay, all right. Chris, let's take a look at the next one. Here we are in Livermore. It's a different market. There are opportunities for first-time buyers. There's significantly more activity in the 500 and down range, but they did have some $1 million listings. They had about 100 in the million up range. But when you think about median, when you see this difference in median sales prices, here's the difference between a 650 median sales price and an 850 median sales price. Is the market is just a completely different place. Let's take a look at Dublin, and I can make these slides available to you if you ask nicely and use the magic word now. Here's Dublin. They're on their way up as well. Few transactions here, about 10 transactions in the 500 and down range, but the bulk of their activity is going to be in the $600 to $900 range. Look at this, 100 listings, $1 million up in Dublin. What do you think about that?
Good schools.
Good schools. Dublin is really becoming a destination for a lot of folk for a lot of different reasons. I've mentioned this before. They've whether by design or by default, they've embraced the changing demographic nature of our country, and it's kind of a neat place. No, I'm not even going to qualify that it's not kind of a neat place. It is a neat place. There you go. I've said it. What do you have? It's a neat place. You live there. That's what. Okay, sales price. What's driving sales prices in Dublin? The presence of Don Cruz, the darling of the television airwaves. Did you see him on TV? Apparently he looks good.
Did you sing?
No, he was not singing. No, we'll tell you about singing a little bit later. Chris, let's move on because I've only got 2 more hours. Look at this. Here's the surprise. Ready? Say it with me. Condos! My wife hates exclamation points, by the way. She's a professional writer. She hates exclamation points. So whenever I have the opportunity to put an exclamation point in, what do? Condos. So, before it came up, Aaron was asking me, hey, do you ever get nervous before you speak in public? And I said, no, I don't. This doesn't scare me. But condos do scare me. I've been afraid of condos for a long time. And why? Because historically, the condo market is so volatile that it's hard to tell the story about what's going on in condos. So I've avoided them because it scares me, and I don't like to be scared. Who wants to be scared? I hide my eyes in scary movies. I don't even watch scary movies. But guess what? I'm facing my fears for you. I'm doing this for you. So, 3 slides on condos. Chris, let's hit it. First one is we're going to take a look at inventory going back the last 12 months. Not a big, long discussion because I want to kind of ease my way into condos. And what we see in the condo market, it's not that scary. It basically mirrors a traditional real estate year. We see a much larger supply of inventory in Dublin. Why? Because that's where they are. That's because Dublin has said yes to condos. And we saw a drop in condo inventory that corresponds with when we would normally see a drop in inventory. Nothing scary here. What's interesting though is to see just how closely Dublin and Pleasanton are in terms of their supply of condos. The thing that scares me about the condo market is it's volatile. The average in Pleasanton, we typically have seen about 44 units on the market going back the last 13 months. Does this help at all?
Yeah.
Yeah? You want more condo stuff? More condos. Okay, let's take another look at condos. Chris, if you could. So, here's sales activity, and this is a little scarier because you can see, as I mentioned earlier, just how volatile it is. You'll see these big jumps. I mean, a 10-unit jump between June and July last year, then it jumps down from July to August. Big dip from December to January, and these huge spikes in activity. So, bottom line is, okay, yeah, condos jump around a little bit, but there's a supply of them out there, and the supply's been pretty steady. The other thing that's oftentimes a little volatile is pricing. And Chris, if you could, let's take a look at the next slide. And here we are with pricing, and wow. Whoa. Wow. Is that something I did or something up there on this? There. Okay, good. I need a drink. I'm going to leave this up there for a second. And this is what scares me about condos is they're volatile. They move. And they move a lot. I mean, look at the median sales drop here in Livermore. That's a $100,000 drop from July to August, and then it rebounds immediately from August to September. And then look at this spike in February. You're up to almost $650,000 for the median priced condo in Pleasanton. And then it drops, almost $200,000 to $150,000. And then here's where we are. We start the 13-month period with a median sales price of $470. We end at $488. So there's appreciation in that area as well. So question for you. Do you want more condo stuff in the future?
Yes.
I'm sorry, was that a yes?
Yes.
Debbie, you put your hand up.
I have a question. So when you say condos, are you including townhouses and HUDs also, or just flat out condos?
That's an excellent question. So this includes attached properties, townhomes, condos. Now you use the term PUD, which stands for Planned Unit Development. Now you may have single-family detached homes that were built as part of a planned unit development. So we wouldn't use that as something we would search on. But this is condos, townhomes. If you all put it in the MLS as something that we consider attached, it shows up here. Would you like me to break it out into condos versus townhomes?
No. Yes.
You want to think about that for a second, everybody? Yeah. Okay, so for her question was, her statement was, for financing purposes, there's a distinction. What we can do though, if you need a special tabulation, we could pull out some stats on that and divide it out between the various different types of attached product. Okay? So we'll keep rocking the condos. Next time we have you back in a couple of years. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, last slide. That's me. That's my contact information. Question for you guys. What am I missing? What do you guys need to know about? Was that a tumbleweed I just saw blow through the Philip.
I'm not sure how much this plays into the residential area, but I'm interested in the overlap with the commercial leasing and what the market's doing. Because Pamela just mentioned that in Pleasanton, vacancy's gone from about 10% to about 16%, which is a fairly significant jump. So what's the reason for that, and how does it play into the residential sales?
Okay, so Phil's question is there a correlation between commercial real estate activity and residential? I don't know. I can look into that. Find out if there's any, why that 16% jump. That's a good question.
I think we got companies in Pleasanton and Dublin as part of the reason, but.
Perhaps.
We have one more question.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Oh, nice guy. Oh, okay, good.
You're up.
Feel good on David. One thing that I think that we need to change is we need to stop calling it inventory. We're not selling a commodity, and we're calling it inventory. It cheapens it. So we need to call it a home or a house, depending on whether we're the seller or the buyer.
Point taken. I will see if I can come up with a cooler term than the I word. Sir.
I agree with you about flattening on price, but I think that's going to run up against supply and how fast it gets eaten. So I'm curious, when we talk about how much inventory is, how many months of inventory. In other words, if our absorption is, we're on average in those 5 marketplaces selling 50, and we've got 200, there's 4 months, 6 months. And as the months of supply goes down, that bolsters the ability for the price to remain. Although I do think $1 million scares people, like that 7th digit. I agree with you there.
Yeah.
That's nasty. But I'd like to know months of how fast we think we can eat it versus just the number, because I know you know that.
We do, and months of supply is something that we do present in our monthly, one pager that we put up on the Bay East website. I will tell you this: we've been south of 2 months supply, probably south of 1 month of supply for the last 2 years. But we can include that because that is something we have. I was at Legacy making a similar presentation earlier this week. If any of you would like something like this at your office meeting, let me know. I'm happy to come out. My motivation in making that offer is, well, number one, it's what you pay me to do. And number two, I love having these kinds of conversations because it gives us a different perspective. One thing that you may have noticed at Bay East is that we don't just turn out the same thing month after month, year after year. We try to be responsive to what you all need. So if there's an opportunity for me to come speak at a smaller venue, I'd love to do that. If you have any suggestions, other content we should be covering, please let me know. I know that you're having to, in some cases, compete with your clients about who the real expert is. You're going to see more and more information coming out of the National Association about using Realtor because of the accuracy of the information we provide. But we can't just rest on our laurels. If there's something else that we should be doing or reporting on, please let me know. If you have a calendar or a little widget thing, one last little commercial plug, if I may. Some of you have seen a performing group perform at certain Realtor functions over the last few years with this guy up front and that guy back on guitar and Dale Edelman on the drums, and I might play a little bass guitar. We are performing at Handel's Gastropub. This is a public-facing event on Saturday, August 2nd.
Yeah, our first real gig, everybody.
So we would love to see you there. It's going to be a dance party. Only come if you want to dance because you're going to be shaking it. Yeah. 9 o'clock is our downbeat. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
Let's see if David Stark a big round of applause. Thank you, David. All right, did we all get some value today? Did we? Nah, thank you again. All right, community announcement.